Ladies, there are 4 things I have learned that have helped me tremendously in my marriage. I've learned to self-regulate my emotions, my environment, my behavior, and my mouth. Let's talk about it. Welcome back to Before You Do with Verlyn. I'm your favorite premarital coach and the auntie you didn't know you needed. Thank you for joining me today. Let's talk about self-regulating emotions. We all know, or we should know, that sometimes as women, we can be all over the place with our emotions, with how we feel. And here's the thing. I'm not saying that emotions are a bad thing. So we all have emotions, and that's fine. We all have anger and sadness and happiness and joy. However, being emotional, that's another ball game, and that's where self-regulating comes into play. It is easy to fly off the handle. It's easy to complain all the time and to go off and tell everybody how you feel. And as they say, give everybody a piece of your mind. And one day you're happy, and then an hour later you're enraged. And then another hour later you're huggy and kissy face. Ladies, the better we control our emotions, the better off we will be as individual ladies, and the better off the people in our family or workplace will be. And here's the thing. I'm not putting down the fact that we have emotions. What I'm saying is when you can regulate how you feel, okay, and how you emote onto people, it is life changing. It all boils down to self-control. And what does that mean? Or what does that look like? That means when I come into the house, even if I have cleaned up a particular room and I see that stuff is all over the place, which is a pet peeve of mine, I can control whether I go to the people in my house and confront them with peace, with respect, or I can go to them stark, raving, mad, yelling, screaming. I can control that. And so if I come in the house and I've cleaned up the kitchen, and let's say I've gone to run errands, and I see dishes are in the sink, and I see stuff is not put away in the cabinets, the cabinet doors are open. I promise you, my children, I think it's against their religion to close cabinet doors. Like, for real. Like, if they open doors, something in them that says, whatever you do, don't close that door. They don't close the cabinet doors. And so if I come in and I've been running errands, it's a beautiful day, I'm feeling good, I'm feeling happy. Maybe I've been listening to podcasts in my truck, and then I come in the house. I have to make a choice. When I see dishes and cabinets open and stuff all out of sorts, I have to make a conscious choice of how do I react. Now, yes, I'm upset or I'm angry, but I choose, okay, am I going to be enraged? Am I going to start yelling and fussing and cursing and throwing things and calling people names? Or am I going to choose to take some breaths to control what I'm thinking and how I'm feeling, and then going from that point? And here's the thing, having control over your emotions, that does not mean you do not confront people and deal with the circumstances, but it is the way that you do it. And so I don't go yelling and screaming again and fussing and cursing. Get in here, do this, do that. Throwing stuff around, yanking things open, slamming things shut. What I do is I will call the offenders down. I will call them one by one. So-and-so come down here. So-and-so come down here. So-and-so. And then I begin the interrogation. All right? I need you to close the cabinet doors. I need you to put the dishes away. Load up the dishwasher. And there's a difference. I'm not going to act like the kitchen isn't a wreck. That's not regulating my emotions to overlook it and let it be. No, because I am still training my teenagers, so I thought, to clean up after themselves. And so I have to confront them and I have to point out, look at this, who did this, fix this, put this in order. However, I'm regulating my emotions because I am speaking to them. I'm not yelling at them. I'm not slamming things shut, although I have felt like it. And so, again, that leads me to the regulating part. There are many times when I just feel like slamming a cabinet shut. I feel like slamming the door. I feel like yelling. I feel like going upstairs and busting through those doors and telling them some stuff. Like, we only been in this house 10 years. You still don't know how to clean up the kitchen? But I regulate those emotions and I confront them. The same with my husband. If there's something that he's done or doing that I don't like, I'm not going to go off on him and say, how come you left the garage door open again? I remember there was a time when the door would be open, and to make a point, I would slam it shut. Because I knew he could hear me, and I knew that would alert him to say, oh my goodness, I left the garage door open again. But I don't do that anymore. I'll go ahead and shut it. And then when he comes back in the house, I'll say, you left the garage door open again. I've even gone as far as I have a note on the door in a page protector saying, please shut the garage door. So again, regulating my emotions keeps the peace. Not just the peace in the house, but the peace in me. It doesn't mean, again, that I don't confront things. It doesn't mean that I don't feel or have emotions. It means that I control how I use them. I control how I come off at people. I can control that. All right. So let's talk about environment. I have learned to self-regulate my environment. What does that mean? Or what does that look like? Number one, that means I choose to be places where I want to be, and I choose to not be places where I don't want to be. All right. I'm at that age and at that stage now where I can say, no, thank you. I don't want to go. Or I can say, yes, please, and I can be there. I choose my environment. I self-regulate my environment at home as much as possible. Now, I don't live by myself, so it is an attempt. It's not something that always happens. I love order. I like my house in order. I want every room in order, but that does not happen all the time when you live alone, especially when you have teenagers, okay? But my immediate space, like my office space, my desk space, my bathroom, those places that I control, I regulate them. I make sure that my environment is neat. I make sure that my environment is inviting. I make sure that my environment is clean. And I make sure that any place where I can control, right, I can regulate, that it's orderly, because that means something to me. Having a desk that's in order, not empty. I've got papers, I've got my laptop, I've got files, I have my printer, but I have things in order because I want to regulate my environment. Now, I can't control every single thing in my home, but I do control most things. I regulate. The living room is going to stay neat. It's going to stay nice. So you cannot sit here and lay on the couch. You can't drop socks all over the place. My dining room, I regulate that environment. I make sure it's neat and clean. I make sure I sweep and I mop when I need to. The kitchen, not so much. We're still working on the kitchen. However, there are certain things I do not tolerate. I regulate my environment. I make sure when I hear my teenagers and it sounds like they're about to get off, I have to call them downstairs. Come on, everybody, let's have a seat. Why? I need peace in my home. I have twin sons that are going on 18. If I hear anything that looks like tussling, come on down, fellas. Call my husband in if he's home. This is what's going on. Need to have a talk. Or if I'm by myself, come on, let's talk about this. What I'm not going to have in my environment where I regulate is fighting, not loving each other. I set the tone for our home. I set the tone for our home. And so when my husband and myself, when we are getting into some heated debates, we go into the bedroom or we step outside. We don't get into yelling matches and cursing matches in our environment because that's not the environment that we want to create for our children. Now, have they heard us get a little loud sometimes? Yeah, but it's usually controlled because we have a healthy respect for each other. And so that's another part of regulating my environment is respect. We command respect to make sure our environment is a place of peace, is a place of love, is a place where you can come and feel I can breathe again. You're not going to come into my environment and feel uptight and feel anxious, right? Because I self regulate in terms of my environment. All right, next behavior. What does it mean when I say I self regulate my behavior? I choose how I act. I make the choice how I show up. I can't control him, or her, but I can control myself. And believe me, that's a handful. Often we try so hard to control everybody around us. And what we need to focus on is controlling ourselves. All right. Michael Jackson said it, right? Look at the man in the mirror, change his ways. Okay, so I show up in the way I behave towards myself, my husband, my children, or anybody I interact with. All right, I can choose my behavior. My husband and I don't always see eye to eye on everything, and we can have some intense moments, but I choose how I behave with him. You're not going to ever hear me cursing him out. You're not going to ever hear me telling him where he can go and what he can do. You're not going to hear me disrespecting my husband. Why? I choose to regulate my behavior and how I show up. And I choose not just for myself, but to be examples for my children and how they should be treated and how they should treat others, as well as I love my husband. Just because we disagree on things strongly doesn't mean that I want to disrespect him. And that I want to show him a behavior that I'll regret later. This happened recently, I think maybe in the past couple of months. And I don't remember what it was, but my husband and I were driving and my husband was pretty heated about something. And it's something because you when you think about it, you have these intense moments. And if you say something that's just awful that you can't take back, right? Or you do something that you can't take back, that leaves a mark. And sometimes you can't remember what it was about. You don't even remember what were you fussing and fighting about, but you remember the thing that was said, or you remember the thing that was done that was hurtful. That's why you have to be in control. You have to regulate your emotions. You have to regulate your behavior. So anyway, we were driving along and I was listening to my husband. He told me, and don't fix me anything to eat and don't buy me anything to eat either. And I said, okay. Now, if you know my husband, that is saying a lot. My husband's love language is food. Like, that is the thing. If I cook something that he really, really loves, he's like, he wants to marry me all over again because food is huge in his world. So he said that. And guess what? He was making a statement. He was basically saying, I'm not feeling you at all today. I don't even want you to cook for me and don't even buy me anything. That's what he said. And then I dropped him off. I was like, okay. Now I was dropping him off to do some things and I knew he would be exerting some energy. It was kind of warm. And I knew after he finished, he would be tired. And I had to pick him. No, did I pick him up? I don't recall. So I knew he was going to be gone all day long doing physical labor. And I had not cooked anything. And I was out and about. I was running my errands. And one of his favorite places to eat is Jersey Mike's. That's our fast food. Like, we don't go to all the other chains. I'm not even going to call names. Jersey Mike, that's equivalent to fast food for us, where they make your sandwiches. And so I was in the parking lot and I was saying, I know he's going to want something to eat, but he had that attitude. Don't fix me anything and don't buy me anything either. So he had an attitude and he made sure I knew. But in the moment, I said, I know he's going to be hungry and I know he loves Jersey Mike's. And so what did I do? I chose my behavior. I didn't say, well, since he said don't fix me anything and don't buy me anything either, forget him. I'm not. Nope. I went right in there. got his usual, came home. He beat me home. He had just gotten home a few minutes ago and he was still standing in our driveway. And I was pulling up. I had the bag in my hand and he looked at me and he said, "Is that for me?" And I said, "Nope, it's for me." I was kidding. I handed him the bag and he just looked at me with so much love. He was just like, "You know me so well." And he was so thankful and he was so happy. He felt loved. Even though we had had this blow up, well, he was the one. He understood that it does not matter how he acted. My behavior showed love. My behavior showed the care. My behavior showed the understanding that I knew my husband was going to be hungry at the end of the day. And so even though he said, "Don't buy me nothing, don't fix me nothing," I knew that I needed to have something for him to eat. And he was so thankful. And he was apologetic. And we ended on a good note. Why? Because I regulated my behavior. I didn't act a certain way because he acted a certain way. I acted the way I knew I should act. I was my authentic self. And my authentic self said, "I don't care what he said. I know that he didn't mean it. I know he's going to be hungry. I want to make sure my husband has something to eat." All right. Another way that I self regulate is my mouth. I've almost become a pro at this, ladies. I'm so serious. I have learned that this is one of the most important lessons I've learned in regulating my mouth. Everything that's said does not warrant a response. All right? Everything does not warrant a response. You can plead the fifth to yourself. You have the right to remain silent, knowing that any and everything you say can and will be held against you. You remember the Miranda rights? We had to learn that. That was way back in the day when we had to learn about government or civics. Yeah, the Miranda rights. Remain silent because anything you say, you're going to hear it again. It's going to be held against you in a court of law, right? I have learned to exercise that right. I have learned to listen twice as much as I speak. You got 2 ears, 1 mouth, right? That should give us a hint right there. We should listen twice as much as we speak. And I have learned that. And I promise you, it brings me peace. Not only does it bring peace to me, but to those around me. There are times, again, dealing with my husband, when we have maybe been going back and forth, and I decide, you know what? At this point, I'm going to be quiet and I'll just listen. And that's it. It is a discipline. It is regulation because probably for every 10 words my husband has, I got about 10,000. I'm a published author, meaning I write a lot and I speak. And so to regulate and not feel like tit for tat, to regulate my mouth and know that I don't have anything to prove. There have been times when I have been 100% right and I knew it. But you know what? I said, okay, I don't have anything to prove. Guess what? Time will tell all things. And sometimes the best thing to do to keep the peace is to regulate the mouth. It's a huge game changer. Self-regulation, period, is a huge game changer because, as I stated, so often we want to change the other person, but really it's about the changes in ourselves. It's about being able to regulate your emotions, to regulate your environment, to regulate your behavior and your own mouth. Those are the things you can control. I've learned after so many years of trying to regulate other people, it absolutely does not work. I can't control anybody's mouth around here. I can't control how people feel. I can help. I don't want to do something to make someone upset, to hurt feelings, but I can't control that. But I can control my own mouth. I can control my emotions. I can control my immediate environment. And I definitely can control my behavior. And when you learn to regulate your mouth, your tongue, ladies, I promise you, the peace is one that cannot be explained because most of the time we want to go, 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 go. But when you learn to sit in silence, when you learn to hear, you can decode. But when we're busy talking and emotional, we can't learn. Lots of times, your man, your husband is trying to express himself. He's trying to get you to understand what he's saying and how he's feeling. But because we can't control our mouth, we can't hear. Therefore, we can't comprehend. Therefore, there is no solution. And I would challenge you to consider what you've heard. When I tell you it can change you and how you show up in your marriage, I truly mean it. Thank you for joining this conversation. I appreciate each and every one of you. Please hit the like button. Make sure you're subscribed. And please share this out with at least 3 or 4 people. I would greatly appreciate that. Visit my website, verlyntarlton.com, and pick up your freebies, as well as, again, ladies, there's a group that I'm working on, and I will keep you posted because my goal is to see 1 million women be and stay happily married. In the meantime, may you experience extraordinary love. Bye for now.